Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jack Daly, Director of the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here this morning. And we're delighted to collaborate with the National Association for Urban Debate Leagues in presenting the Great Space Debate. Holding the debate in Moving Beyond Earth Gallery is especially appropriate because this exhibition presents the space shuttle era, which is concluding, as well as the future possibilities in space. With the retirement of the shuttle program, we are on the cusp of new adventures, ones that will directly affect future generations. This is also the museum's most interactive gallery, in that we present recorded and live programming. Judging from the size and enthusiasm of the audience today for today's program, it promises to be very interactive and very stimulating. In planning for the future of spaceflight, it is critical that we be prepared. To adequately educate tomorrow's astronauts, scientists, engineers, and other space professionals, we need to prepare them to be competitive. That's why there is so much attention today on the STEM disciplines of science, technology, engineering, and math. I hope all of you still in school will take advantage of the educational opportunities in these essential areas. The subject of today's program is very important to me, and I look forward to hearing your views. To get the program started, it is my pleasure to introduce the board chair of the National Association for Urban Debate Leagues, Mr. Leonard Gale.
Okay. So in 10 minutes, I'll see you all out on Independence Avenue. An excellent tour lined up. No. Thank you, General. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, and of course, thank you to our judges. On behalf of the National Association for Urban Debate Leagues, and stepping in for our Executive Director, Linda Listrom, who's recovering as I speak, we are delighted you are here. There really can't be any more appropriate forum for a debate on space than this building. Many of us have come here as children and as students, and have been wowed by what goes on here and what we learn about. And I hope and expect that you will have the same reaction after you witness and watch today's debate. So let me briefly introduce our esteemed panel of judges, and then we'll get started. So we have, let's see. I'm just going to say people's names, and if you would stand up and we recognize, that'd be great. Genevieve Dubose. Genevieve. We asked the Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, who was our keynote speaker last night, to designate some people from his organization to be judges, and you win the prize. So thank you for having us. Let me ask you to hold your applause until the end, just so we can get through. Jay Finch. Jay is the Director in Policy and Strategic Development for Global Strategic Affairs of the Space Policy Office of the United States, Under Secretary of Defense. Jay, thank you for coming. Patrick Garrett. Patrick is the Deputy National Intelligence Officer for Science and Technology at the National Intelligence Council in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Mike Gottlieb is Associate White House General Counsel, and more importantly, is a very, very famous former high school and college debater. Clare Jellinek. Clare is Arnie's #2 designee. She is a Washington Teaching Ambassador Fellow in the Office of Educational Technology in the Office of the Secretary. Jeff Cuter. Jeff is the President of the George Marshall Institute. Kathleen Lewis is the Curator of the collection of the International Space Programs at the National Air and Space Museum. Thank you for having us. Peter Marquez. Peter is the Vice President of Strategy and Planning Services at Orbital Sciences. Jeff McGinnis. Jeff has chosen the noble path of being a lawyer. He's the Associate General Counsel at Walmart Stars, Inc. Cindy Moelis, who is the Director of the White House Fellows Program. and a welcome and personal friend. Pat Shondell. He is the Vice President of Homeland Security, NASA, and Science and Technology Government Operations. And Dr. Margaret Whitecamp. She is the curator of the collection of social and cultural dimensions of spaceflight here at the National Air and Space Museum. Thank you again for having us. And David Song, who's the number 2 man at the Chicago Urban Debate League, has been involved in setting up the debate and working with the students and setting the program, and he's going to describe to us all what's in store. So, David, thank you.
Good morning. As we begin today, yesterday we celebrated the 51st anniversary of human spaceflight, and our students who have been selected from 2 of our top urban debate leagues throughout the country, from the Dallas Urban Debate Alliance and the Baltimore Urban Debate League, will debate about not only the future of space policy, but also the future of our education policy as we look to a generation that makes their choices about how we advance ourselves in science, math, technology, engineering, and space policy. I'm going to briefly discuss the format we'll be using today and give you instructions on how all of you, including our esteemed panel of judges and our student judges, will evaluate this debate. And then I'll introduce our worthy debaters and begin the debate. We will do a 30-minute debate that has 2 constructive speeches to begin for the affirmative and negative, followed by a cross-examination, a rebuttal speech from each team, and then a closing statement. We wanted to also thank a couple of individuals for their effort in putting together this very special event. Our thanks to the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, General Daly, Mike Holslander, Tim Grove, to NAUDL, Linda Lidstrom, and Barb Carney, and most of all to our students and our coaches representing urban debate nationally for being in the audience, for judging this debate, and for preparing as hard as you have to make space policy at the forefront of the things that our students are thinking about and working on throughout the year. Also thanks to the DC public school students who have joined us today, who are not yet debaters, but who will learn from this debate that there's a lot you can do with urban debate and the value that this program has. To introduce our students, for the affirmative, we have from Skyline High School in Dallas, Texas, representing the Dallas Urban Debate Alliance, coached by Mr. Taylor Norwood. The first speaker will be Lauren Lopez. The second speaker, Stephanie Jimenez. For the negative team, representing the Baltimore Urban Debate League from Baltimore City College, the first speaker will be Corwin Jones Jr. The second speaker will be Darian Murray. We'll now begin the debate with the first affirmative constructive. Please welcome Ms. Lauren Loper from Skyline High School in Dallas, Texas.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Loper from Skyline High School in Dallas, Texas. Before we begin today, I'd like to have a few thank yous. First, to the Smithsonian, the National Air and Space Museum, for allowing us to have this demonstration debate here. General Daly, Linda Lidstrom, NAUDL for even making this event possible. My debate coach, my debate partner, Stephanie. Baltimore, our esteemed opponents. The judging panel for taking your time out today to come and judge our debate. And more importantly, you, the audience, for listening to everything that we're going to be talking about today. I will now present the first affirmative speech. A creative economy is the fuel to magnificence. Ralph Waldo Emerson. In order to create the drive to innovate our economy of the future, we must focus on issues that will provide stimulus. This is why my partner and I stand resolved that expanding the U.S. space program will be vital to America's economic future. The United States space program is vital in the advancement of technology, maintaining global leadership, and expanding the interests in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and math. Today, we will argue that these reasons demonstrate the imperative need to expand the space program, resulting in the greatly improved economic outlook. Since the 1960s, the idea of expanding America's space program has always been a popular public opinion. We have come a long way since the space race with the USSR, and although this took place decades ago, we continue to develop new technology that encourages the growth of our economy. Space exploration challenges the human mind to solve modern-day problems beyond the bounds of Earth's atmosphere. A few significant technological spin-offs that have resulted from the development of space include water purifiers, memory foam, cochlear implants, invisible braces, scratch-resistant lenses, and even cordless power tools. The wealth of these technologies that have emerged as spin-off justify the investments made in space exploration. According to the Aerospace Industries Association of America, every U.S. aerospace dollar yields an extra $1.50 to $3 in further economic activity. If we continue to contribute by expanding our space program that's going to yield 150 to 300%, we are not going to waste our money on obsolete and ineffective programs. A second issue that we must consider is how the development of our space infrastructure will be vital to our image among other countries. Currently, the United States leads as the global hegemonic power and is seen as the big brother to other nations. Just as one could not fight a war without a military, the U.S. cannot compete internationally without the necessary commodities from the technology that has been derived from space. The technology can be traded with other countries and begin to open the dialogue between multiple nations. The prestige and influence associated with the development of space technology also gives us an incentive to want to work with other countries. According to an associate professor from Baylor University, Bradley Thayer, quotes, "To abandon its leadership role would be a fundamental mistake of American grand strategy." Indeed, in the great history of the United States, there is no parallel, no previous case where the United States has made a great titanic strategic blunder, end quote. Increased international discussion and cooperation allow soft power approaches to be used much more often and more effectively. This would create a far better way to prevent conflicts worldwide and allowing the United States to maintain its hegemonic position as well as shielding the global economy. The final issue that we will address is the educational benefit that will result from our space program. Currently, our nation has fallen behind in the fields of math and science. However, the space program can spark curiosity in the unknown universal workings, directly leading to the inspiration among future generations. In this, the 21st century, being part of the workforce requires a fundamental understanding of the knowledge of technology. And if the U.S. continues its economic leadership, then we must continue to educate our younger generations in these growingly important fields of math and science. NASA undertakes multiple projects and programs designed for the very purpose of promoting U.S. space interests, and these thus are essential to the improvement of American education and the future of our economy. The generations that will follow us will be raised with the technology that we can only begin to imagine. And if we do not act now, we will be left behind to stand idle and watch our neighbors grow into more advanced societies. We have been asked today to evaluate the effect of the U.S. space program on our economic future. In the golden space days, Americans marveled at the new technologies that have been derived from our work in space. We have watched as nations come together to achieve some of the greatest things humans have ever seen, and consumed the vast amount of new knowledge and understanding from outer space. Logically, we must then consider that by continuing and furthering our space program, we will see the same and even greater outcomes. We will create new technologies, maintain our political leadership, and expand our education, and more importantly, our economy. Thus, I must strongly urge you to vote in the side of affirming today's resolution, that expanding the U.S. space program is vital to America's economic future.
So my first cross-ex question is, if the topic for today's debate is how space is vital to our economic future, what is your definition of vital?
Our definition of vital is being of great importance. And in this circumstance, we're talking about the vitalness of the space exploration key to our economic future, which we have shown that plays a key and integral role.
Okay, my next question is, why do you put certain forms of education before others?
Okay. We believe that creativity is not the exclusive domain for any branch of study, and we believe that the liberal arts are important, but other areas such as math and science are key to innovation and creativity of the future.
My final question is, given that the U.S. has ended their shuttle program and reduced its influence in space, how will you achieve your goal of making the U.S. the leader in space in the near future?
A renewed improvement will continue to expand our space leadership. And we've already explored space with numerous missions, such as Apollo, which took us to the moon. We'd used heavy launch vehicles to take us to deep space exploration. We've done climate science and weather monitoring. We've done monitoring situational awareness. This will continue to grow our leadership, and it's much more advanced for our society as a whole. So.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Corwin Jones Jr. from Baltimore City College, here representing the Baltimore Urban Debate League, and I will just like to say thank you to General Daly, the Smithsonian, for allowing us to show our skills in debate. I would like to also thank Mr. David Song, Ms. Linda Lindstrom, my coach Patrick Daniels, my family here in attendance today, my teammates Darian and Mina, and also my opponents from Dallas. I will now present the negative case, but first, a quote from Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan once said that the government's economy could be summed up in a few short phrases. If it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. Now I will present the negative perspective on why the expansion of the space program is not vital to the U.S. economic future and how it actually hurts the U.S. economic future. There are two main points that I will be presenting to you today. One, the expansion of the space program is not vital to the U.S. economic future, and a result of the expansion of the space program is deficit spending. My first point is the expansion of the space program is not vital. There's a couple reasons why space is not vital. One, people lack access to good education, which doesn't benefit them. Two, deficits will grow if we expand the space program. And three, Dr. Franko Milanovic, lead economist for the World Bank, says, now widespread education has become the secret to growth. My partner and I believe that our economic future is a future where everyone benefits, and that is what is truly vital in this situation. In the perspective of the negative, we believe that there are some more essential issues than expanding the exploration of the space program, such as lack of jobs, which raises the unemployment rate. A study was done by a group based right here out of D.C. that high school dropouts cost the U.S. about $300 billion in lost income. And the Affirmative thinks that expanding the space program can make up for the lost income. Instead, the expansion of the space program will never be able to make up for any of this lost income and will never be able to fix our economy. And the only way to fix our economy, the Alliance for Excellent Education puts it best. They say, our economic recovery depends on helping high school dropouts and not finding college graduates better jobs. The jobs that we would create would also help urban areas, because in urban areas like in Baltimore, they are literally falling apart, criminally under-resourced and very overcrowded. For example, in my school, Baltimore City College, where I'm currently a student, there are pieces of the walls missing, there are holes in the ceiling, and the classrooms are seriously overcrowded. I mean, there are 30 or more kids to each classroom, which makes it seriously hard for the teachers to teach because not every student learns the same way. That is why my partner and I stand in negation to the expansion of the space program. Dr. King says, If our nation can spend $20 billion to put a man on the moon, it can spend billions of dollars to put God's children on their own 2 feet right here on Earth. Our second point is that deficit spending hurts our economic future. There are 2 points to why deficit spending is a result of the expansion of the space program. One, space is expensive. The space program is very expensive, and it puts the U.S. in binds because all this spending on space becomes and puts us greater in debt because how expensive this is. Michio Kaku, a professor from the City College of New York, says the space station costs upwards to $100 billion, and there's no way to make up for that money. And Frank Slakey, a PhD physicist who writes for the Scientific America about space, said, suppose NASA loaded the shuttle's cargo bay with confetti to be launched into space. If every kilo of confetti miraculously turned into gold during the return trip, the mission would still lose $270 million. The money on space spent will never be made back because we constantly spend, but we don't get back anything that we spend. Even the greatest find in space isn't guaranteed to be a new way of income so we can give back to the government, so we can get out of this massive debt that has put us in the recession today. The second point is deficit spending does not lead to a better economy. Mark Thoma, a macroeconomist at the University of Oregon, states that the worst outcome would be for the deficit to get so bad that the government defaults on debt payments. If this were to happen, it would send the U.S. economy into a deep depression, worse than one in the 1920s and worse than the one in Germany in the 30s, which of course was a precursor to World War II, in which wheelbarrows full of bills were needed just to buy a loaf of bread. The affirmative is the precursor to the next depression if you guys vote affirmative. The only way we need to guarantee that our money is worth something in the future and to guarantee that we don't default on debts is to vote for the negative. Thank you.
The space program has generated billions of dollars. How then can we not consider it to be not only beneficial to our economy, but vital?
Well, for the space program to benefit billions of dollars, I said in my speech that even though that they have generated these billions of dollars, they haven't really been giving back to the economy to help get us out of this broken economy that has put us in the recession. And so for them to generate these billions of dollars, it just pretty much sits there. They don't really help the economy, or they don't really give back to the government.
Won't the higher level jobs generated through the space program free up the lower level jobs that you mentioned are so vital to our economy?
Well, no, because you're basing the affirmative off of the trickle down economics that Ronald Reagan had, and which did not work, and it also didn't work in the education. So for the affirmative to say that this trickle down would work is false, and that's a paradigm that we need to flip upside down and change to fix our economy.
All right, thank you.
Hello, my name is Darian Murray. Before I begin my speech, I would like to thank the Smithsonian for allowing us to debate here today, the heads of Baltimore Urban Debate League, Chris and Pam, my teammates Corin and Amina, today's distinguished panel of judges, and you, the audience, for watching us debate today. We have come to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum to discuss how space is vital to our economic future, not if space exploration is good or bad. In today's debate, I will respond to the affirmative's main arguments. Our three-part argument against our friends from Dallas is that technology spin-off claims are overstated, U.S. leadership could thrust us back into a space race, and education must come first. We have two responses to their economy argument. We will concede that there are technological, economic benefits in space, but the affirmative's assumption that things will pay for themselves and that type of ideology is false. Space is too expensive. It does not matter if the affirmative believes that space is vital to our economic future. The point we are trying to make is that no matter how many times we go into space, it will never help our economy. And the main point of today's debate is to discuss how our economy will be affected in the future. Furthermore, Robert Park, professor at the University of Maryland, stated that there are 3 kinds of liars: ordinary liars, damned liars, and spin-off claimers. When you spend billions of dollars on a human spaceflight program, you're going to get some spin-offs. And the great many of spin-offs supposedly developed by NASA were actually quietly, independently developed by the private industry, which used NASA as good advertising. NASA loved it because they could tout these achievements in front of Congress and look like they were doing something useful. But in reality, the most impressive spin-offs, communication satellites, spy satellites, weather satellites, and global positioning satellites, were developed by the private sector. We believe that we should let the private sector lead us into space. The private sector would be a lot cheaper. Also, the private sector does it, and by any chance they failed, we would not feel the repercussions as badly, unlike if NASA did it. Next, I will address the affirmative soft power and U.S. leadership argument. I have 2 responses to this U.S. leadership. Is not always a good thing. It has negative backlash. The affirmative plan sounds like the space race of the Cold War. For a secure economic future, we don't need to go into space. The U.S. doesn't need to lead everything. If we are the leading country in everything else, it wouldn't be a big risk not to be a leader in space. Now I will address how their education argument is flawed. Education must come first. You cannot put the cart before the horse and expect a good outcome. There are lots of ways to inspire people to go into the fields of math and science that do not include expanding NASA's budget by billions of dollars. They are drastically overstating the role that NASA has on the public education. Instead of relying on NASA to inspire education reform, we should just invest in our schools. My partner stated earlier that at our school, Baltimore City College, the walls are falling apart and there is overcrowding in all the classrooms. If funding NASA leads to educational reform, they will ignore the urban cities like Baltimore, and our schools and neighborhoods will continue to suffer. When discussing our economic future, former President Calvin Coolidge said it best, and I quote, "Economy is the method by which we prepare today to afford the improvements of tomorrow," end quote. So if we put money towards space now, it won't help our future. But if we put money towards having a better public education system, then the country as a whole would reap the marvelous benefits we will receive. This is why the negative believes that space is not vital to our economic future. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Stephanie Jimenez from Skyline High School in Dallas. Before I begin my speech, I'd like to give some thank yous. First, to the NAUDL and Smithsonian for letting us be here today. Also to Nicole Serrano, our director of the Dallas Urban Debate Alliance, my coach Taylor Norwood, and my partner Lauren for all of their hard work, David Song for coordinating today's debate, our opponents from Baltimore, and of course our esteemed judges and audience watching here today. Today I'll be giving the second affirmative rebuttal. I will begin by attacking the negative team's case. The negative argues the space program is less essential than other things such as the unemployment crisis, particularly for low-skilled workers. The negative seems to believe that the space program only benefits those with college degrees. However, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development found that in 2010, 56.2% of all college graduates in America between the ages of 25 and 29 work in low-skilled level jobs, Creating more jobs for that 56.2% through the space program frees up jobs suitable for those with a lower level education, such as the high school dropouts, that have such an impact on our economy. Meaning, we can redeem that $300 billion. We can improve our urban area schools such as Skyline High School or Baltimore City College. And we can indeed get people back on their own 2 feet. Second, the negative argues that adding more money into our space program hurts our economy. But in actuality, they overstate the cost and do not acknowledge the economic returns. American space spending is about 0.34% of its $14.3 trillion GDP, and the returns have far exceeded the investment. Spin-offs such as GPS and communication satellites have introduced new technologies and new industries into the American economy. And as our economy is beginning to show resilience, it is evident that any increase of funding on space will not be a burden, but instead a stimulus. Next, I will respond to the negative rebuttal. The negative argues that the spin-off effect is overstated. However, the amount of money derived not only from the technology created in space, but its use and functionality creates a trickle-down effect that will reach every person sitting in this room today. For example, measuring infrared radiation of planets has revolutionized the thermometer that we use every time we catch a cold. The negative also fails to realize just how vital NASA has been to private companies' endeavors. Private companies have proven to extend the U.S.'s space exploration and increase the technological and economic benefits through increased competitiveness and efficiency. But this can only happen after the initial contributions of the U.S. space program. Next, we as the Affirmative do not endorse a Cold War mentality. However, we must realize that the key to a good economy is a competitive economy. Being a space leader means having the knowledge and technology before others do. The U.S. being a space leader gives us an economic edge. Other countries will want to work with us and become more involved in order to attain the knowledge that we have maintained, and they will want to work with us on the further development. This leads not only to our political leadership, but our economic leadership. And lastly, the negative expands on their education argument, saying there are other ways to promote STEM education. However, it is only through new application and development that we are able to generate the knowledge and truly educate ourselves. Educating and inspiring young people is about much more than just producing future astronauts. The broad fields of math and science that are promoted through the space program educate our future thinkers and engineers. That they will be our problem solvers and thinkers of the future. They will be responsible for inspiring their own generations, and we must prepare them now. Today we argue in favor of the space program. We can work on the cost and we can make corrections. What we cannot do is make up for the missed opportunities and lost economic benefits that will be a result of supporting a negative view of this topic. For that reason, we urge you to agree that the space program is indeed vital to our American economic future.
In closing, this debate is about what priorities are vital to the U.S. economic future, and we, the negative, think that there are more important issues than expanding the space program. Like we stated earlier, education is one of those important issues. Dr. Franco Milanovic, the lead economist in the World Bank, says when physical capital mattered, most investments were key. And he writes, now widespread education has become the secret to growth. We need to focus on education because when we help unemployed high school dropouts, which have cost us $300 billion in lost income, this growing amount of money lost could detrimentally hurt our economy. Frank Slakey has put it best also, when he talks about how if we fill a cargo bay, the shuttle's cargo bay, with confetti and it turns to gold on the return trip, we still lose $270 million. And for the affirmative to say that they need to expand the space program, that's just going to make us lose even more money. The rate is going to rise. We need to invest in our social capital and show schools that we care and show students that we care by investing in urban areas, because they are ones that need the help the most. Like from my school, like my partner and I stated, our school is literally falling apart and is really seriously overcrowded. I mean, like, there's so many kids in there. It's hard to teach them all. And when we invest in schools, we can make classrooms have less students. We can pay more teachers to help us teach. We could invest in the schools, that way students won't drop out, so we won't have as high as a dropout rate as we do in Baltimore now. And also, now to deficit spending, we also need to focus on this deficit spending that could maybe even cause another depression. We would all have to live with the burden that we had the chance to fix our economy, but we decided to go to space first and put the economy second if we vote for the affirmative. Next, we will focus on the flaws of the affirmative. The affirmative wants you to believe that for every $1 you give them, that they'll give you back 2 later. That's false. And furthermore, my partner stated about Robert Park, there are 3 kinds of liars: ordinary liars, damned liars, and spinoff claimers. And for the affirmative to give you this false claim about if you give them $1 and they give you 2 back later, it just makes the deficit grow, because you're just paying them and they're not giving back, just like the space program. And the affirmative wants you to believe that the next great find in space would be the next iPhone 6S, maybe the next great laptop, or a coffee machine that could read your mind and make the coffee just the way you like it. We also need to think about this. Dr. King said, if our nation can spend $20 billion to put a man on the moon, it can spend billions of dollars to put God's children on their own 2 feet right here on Earth. In conclusion, we, the negative, believe that we should put our economy, which serves as the horse, first, and the expansion of the space program second, which serves as the cart, in order to have the best outcome and not go into another depression. Thank you.
Albert Einstein once said, to raise new questions, new possibilities, to regard old problems from a new angle, requires creative imagination and marks the real advances in science. During the Industrial Revolution nearly a century ago, the US created inventions that have led to our modern day society. The truth of this matter is that one does not know what type of technology that is going to revolutionize the future. The innovation that we have seen over the past decades that have come from space exploration and research are enough proof to marvel at the types of things that could derive from the advancements into our future. It is true that the private companies are responsible for the technological advancements associated with space. But those developments would have not been possible without NASA's initial investment. The same will be true with our future. Investing in the space program will continue to benefit the private sector and the economy as a whole. The affirmative does not fit the definition of a spin-off claimer. You cannot disprove the tangible evidence provided from the aerospace industry about the returns of space spending. Given that 15% of our national GDP is invested in education, the negative arguments about budget deficits and deficit spending require that we look to the most efficient means of reforming our education system, while investing in space can help produce by prioritizing math and science education as a path to careers. We have proven that an open dialogue between multiple nations will improve a soft power approach and gives other countries an incentive to want to work with the United States on space and non-space issues. Having a strong economy will help bolster our economy as well as those of our neighbors. A continued investment in space will create new knowledge. It will educate the next generation of students. It will inspire the problem solvers of tomorrow. Not everyone wants to become an astronaut, but we must teach our younger generation the skills that are going to be necessary to maintain their future lifestyles. It is our job to find the material to enhance our history books of the future. The economic benefits are significant enough to want to continue to invest in space. We cannot make up for the missed opportunities for not investing in the U.S. space program. This is why my part and I stand in affirmation of today's resolution, that expanding the U.S. space program is vital to America's economic future. Thank you for everyone for your time this morning, and thank you again to the National Air and Space Museum.
That concludes our debate. We're going to ask each of our students and our distinguished panel of judges to look over their notes, to look at their ballots and make a decision. Each student will be evaluated on 5 criteria, being the use of evidence, their creativity, the analytic quality of their arguments, their overall communication skills, and their cross-examination. Please evaluate each student from 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, and the winning team will be the team that has more points out of 100, and that will be the winning team that you circle at the top of your ballot. For the students in the audience, we'll go around and collect your ballots, and the student vote will count as one judge on our panel. And for our distinguished judges, please signal once your entire table on both sides is finished, and Mr. Lenny Gale from NAUDL will ask each judge to reveal their decision and what they wanted to comment upon in the debate to help our students with their further inquiry into space policy and which arguments that resonated the most with them in making their decision. So please take a few minutes, make a good decision. This is a very important debate, and may I ask for one more big round of applause for our students for a great performance.
So, before we announce the decision, what we're going to do is ask each member of our panel to give comments. Try to limit yourself to 2 minutes, and try to, if you would, make it non-numeric. We've got all of the number rankings and so forth, so just spend a couple minutes going through how you viewed the debate, strengths, weaknesses, really however you see fit. And if you don't mind, we'll just go clockwise, and we'll start with Ms. DuBose, Judge DuBose, who is now be given the microphone.
So hello?
Yep,
Can you
you're
hear
good.
me? Okay, great. So first off, I just want to say congratulations to all of you. This was my first debate, and I learned a great deal from all of you and was really impressed, so thank you. My feedback is really thinking about, as a teacher, I think a lot about what kind of impact we can make on people. Your use of quotes from both teams I thought was really pertinent in this debate, and also the use of personal stories I thought was really crucial, and the use of statistics in terms of stating different facts that connect to what you're talking about. In terms of feedback, I would just offer to some teams to think about expanding your argument beyond your own personal stories, but to think about what other ways that you can connect your argument to other folks in the audience, that in terms of a public debate, ways that you can convince us, things that we might connect to. And when you are dealing with rebuttal, and I would suggest, as opposed to simply saying that's not going to work, go back to your bag of tricks in terms of what specific examples you have that will connect to that. So I'm trying to keep it general, but I really enjoyed the conversation, and I learned a great deal from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Garrett.
Well,
congratulations to both sides. This was, I think, a very interesting discussion, and in many ways it was probably a close decision for many of the judges involved. I think that one of the key pieces of feedback that I would offer is that it's important in the use of the evidence that was provided to also try to go beyond and provide some additional analysis as to why the warrants or the claims within those pieces of evidence were used and why you believe that perspective is important. There's a lot of the evidence that was provided was very good, hyperbolic, and rhetorical information, but at the same time, it really left something to be desired in some cases for why those views were interested. The other aspect that I thought would be, that I liked on both ends was, again, the discussions about personal experiences, but also I think there was a recognition and some identification on both sides on where there may be some differences of view and how those views may be relative and how either space could be helpful or in some cases not as much. So good luck to everyone this weekend and congratulations again.
Dr. Lewis.
Once again, congratulations to all of you. You did a magnificent job. I'm very impressed. This, too, is my first debate, and I learned a lot, and this is my field, so you should be very proud of yourselves. The one suggestion goes back to the rebuttal against evidence cited by the other side, and I think that it would serve you all very well if you would elaborate more on that rebuted evidence and talk about why it is wrong and what your thought process is in using it. And as an historian, I'm very glad that you used ample numbers of quotes throughout. Referring to the past is always very useful.
Thank you. Judge Finch.
Thank you. Congratulations to both teams here. Having just completed a budget cycle in the Pentagon on space systems recently, I thought the debate really captured the real-world discussion that is going on right now in the space community. And that's the recognition that space is very important. Space brings a lot of benefits to our society, to our economy, to our armed forces, but those benefits come at a cost. And I thought that tension that was debated here between the trade-offs of our scarce dollars as a country, I thought you both captured that very well, and so I applaud you for sort of capturing the real-world debate that's happening in our government today. In terms of advice, I would recommend that both sides, aside from just trying to refute and disprove the other side's claims, think hypothetically about a world in which the other side's claims were true. In terms of education and the best way to stimulate education, the affirmative would make a claim that we're best served by inspiring children and the creative imagination that comes from space. Whereas the negative made the claim that it's really the infrastructure. You know, you use the powerful example of your own schools with overcrowded classrooms and the infrastructure falling apart. But both of those claims can be true at the same time. And so comparing which claim might be more important than the other, you know, what is really the key variable to improving our educational system. And I think if you focus trying to harmonize both sides' arguments, hypothesizing that perhaps they're both true and trying to evaluate which one is more important might help give you an edge over your opponents this weekend. So again, congratulations and best of luck.
Thank you. Judge Molis.
First of all, this is also my first debate, and I really appreciate the talent you bring to this and educating all the judges as to your perspective. So thank you so much. You guys are terrific. I run something called the White House Fellowship, and I'm hoping that in about 10 or 15 years I see some applications coming through because you guys would be wonderful. You should think about public service. That's my role, is pushing the program. I do want to say that in terms of my one comment, I would say go back to the evidence. You know, you were very affirmative about your statements and you were very convincing as to your core values and what you wanted to convey, but sometimes it was just a statement as opposed to being backed up by some evidence in the background. So I would say just remember to, every time you do an affirmative statement, to bring in some evidence. I also am hoping that some of your predictions about extreme things like depression, another depression, are not going to come true if we do end up giving to the space program, but I really appreciated the education. Thank you, and good luck this weekend.
Judge Cutter.
Well, as a retired debater, I want to thank you for this most enjoyable opportunity to get back into the ring, to judge a debate, and to hear the clash of ideas. I commend all four of you for an excellent performance today. I would commend my opinion to most of what you've heard from the other judges thus far, and would single out one particular item that I thought the clash of ideas and the use of evidence and analysis was exemplary on the part of all four of you, and that had to do with the issue of spin-offs. I thought that discussion was just superb, and if we had seen that across all of the issues in the debate, this would have been really one for the ages, but you did an excellent job in that particular area.
So we'll shift over here, and if we can, let's start on the far right. Judge Gottlieb.
Thanks. Yeah, as a former debater also, I just want to commend all the debaters in this round for your delivery and your pacing and your eye contact with the audience, which are things that sometimes we can get away from a little bit in our activity, and I thought all of you did a great job of that. Terrific use of evidence for this kind of a format as well. The main thing I would focus on, really, I agree also that the spin-off part of the debate was by far the most developed and best in terms of clash at the micro level. The main thing that I would focus on for all of you would be in the rebuttals. Really at somewhere near the top, if it's not the first words out of your mouth, very shortly thereafter, you've got to summarize your take-home point on your critical argument for the judges. And in particular, for the negative, you want to think about not only what your strongest sort of offensive argument is, but also think ahead to the last affirmative speech because you don't get a chance to answer it when they're done. And you want to formulate your argument something along the lines of, she's going to get up here in her next speech and tell you this. When she does that, remember this, right? So preempt what you know their strongest argument is going to be because you don't get another chance to come up there when she's done. And then for the affirmative, I think whether it's at the top or some point during your speech, you've got to formulate that final clash of ideas in a sort of an even-if formulation. So even if they've convinced you that their deficit argument is correct, or even if they've convinced you that infrastructure in school is important, here's why we still win. And those kind of formulations will help the judge weigh what can be competing claims that are often difficult to resolve. But great job all around.
Thank you. Judge Marquez.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo what everybody else has said. Fantastic job. Very difficult to decide this one. Just some real specific comments. Lauren, extraordinary clarity, great arguments, very good rebuttal. You hit all the key points in the rebuttal. I thought you did a great job. Stephanie, excellent use of evidence. You used relevant evidence and didn't just throw evidence out and be an informer debater. Sometimes you just throw as much as you can and see what sticks, but you were very precise and it was very good, and very good organization of your arguments. Corwin, excellent way of putting the debate on your terms. You put it out there, and everybody was responding to what you put out there. You did a very good job, very persuasive. And Darian, great focus and keying in on the affirmative's weaknesses. I really liked your ability to attack and stay on them. It was very good. So just a couple of points, and I think Pat and Jay actually covered my points. I was going to say lots of assertions, but not a lot of analysis on the assertions. Kind of missed the why. When Pat and Jay and I worked together in government, they used to hate me because I would say, why are we doing this, why? And if you'd asked a few why questions, it probably would have helped. And then Jay mentioned the issue that there wasn't a mutual exclusivity in your arguments. They could have both coexisted, or that there was a intellectual inconsistency in the negatives argument that increased deficit spending through space equals depression, but increased spending in education doesn't somehow equal depression. So, great overall debate. It was fantastic, and being a former debater, like Jeff said, this was great for me to be back here as well.
Thank you. Judge Shondo.
Thanks. As an engineer by training, is this on? Yeah. As an engineer by training, I couldn't imagine myself being up where you are at your age. I'm amazed that I'm here now. This is really exciting for me. I think that the argument on STEM, that's not the only educational element that's important, really brought forward the debate that's going on today on what the priorities are for the U.S. government. I thought that was pretty powerful. I think the best part that came out of that for me working in the industry was the private enterprise should be pulled on a lot more than just relying on government investment, right? So I thought that perhaps there could have been a little more evidence on that part of it than the amount of quotes that were used, and then the defense on the affirmative side about the private enterprise being involved is good, but it being paced and seeded by the government investment originally, I thought was very strong, you know, to counterbalance, because that really is the model that happened in the aviation industry, right? And so I thought it was a great job by both teams. Fantastic. Thanks for letting us be here.
Thank you. Dr. Whitecamp.
Okay. I'm a curator here at the National Air and Space Museum, and actually I'm one of the people who's working on the team that's actually creating the gallery you're sitting in. And what we're trying to do in here is tell the story of this kind of particular historical moment of the space shuttle program, which is finished, of the International Space Station, which is ongoing, and a future human spaceflight, which you'll see is this big blank wall in the back that we have been struggling to write over the last 5 years, because that story keeps changing. And I really thought that you know, it's very fitting then on a couple of points that we had you here having this particular debate, because in many ways some of the arguments that you were making on the stage really are the ones that we've been grappling with as we're trying to figure out what are we going to do, how do we tell this story of what's coming in the future. So 2 points. One is I was just very impressed with your poise and your argumentation, with your personal presentation. This is a stage where we have hosted astronauts, we've hosted heads of companies, we've hosted the NASA administrators, and you really equipped yourself as well as I've seen any of them do on this space. And then secondly, I would say as an historian, I'm always interested in more historical arguments. So one of the things we're finding in space history in this particular moment is there is this major moment of transition as we're moving from the space shuttle program to future human spaceflight, or perhaps more future spaceflight that's not manned, that is robotic or probes or things like that. And so I would have been interested in a little bit more argumentation. The spin-offs argument, I agree with my colleagues, was excellent. I would have been interested in a little more specifics, digging into when you say the space program, what do you mean? And thinking about how that affects the other arguments that you can make about its economic viability or its economic impact. But overall, very nicely done. Congratulations.
Thank you. Judge Jellinek.
Hi, everybody. I'm really impressed. I want to say I'm a high school teacher from New Mexico, but I come to teaching by way of international development. And so one of the things that I noted was the use of statistics, and I echo what has already been said. Statistics are very powerful. They can change minds, and how you use them in your arguments can make all of the difference. So I would just caution a little more attention to the causation and correlation aspect of your arguments. Something else that I wanted to note was, I think there's something to be said about assumptions. And so is there somewhere in some of the arguments the assumption that if we don't spend on space, then we're automatically putting that money into education? And I'm not sure historically that that's the case, so that's something that I would urge you to think about a little bit. And then finally, again, it might have to do with stats and evidence, but as an example, the trickle-down economy, when you say we're not sure that, when you say trickle-down economy doesn't work, what is the evidence, what is the proof? And so I would just urge you to think a little bit more about correlation and causation throughout your arguments.
Thank you. Judge McGinnis.
Yes, thank you very much for letting me be here and for taking part in this. To echo what the other judges had said, I'd echo all of it. I agree with it. And the first thing I would note from my own comments are terrific. Congratulations and good job on all the hard work and commitment that got you here today. It's months or years. The intellectual curiosity and commitment and those skills, wherever you're going, those will serve you very well for the rest of your life. I agree with all what the other judges have said. I would add, I had in my notes, I wrote conclusory a number of times, jumping right to a conclusion, and I think that everybody else has said that in one form or another. So I never debated, but if that's jumping out at me, you might want to work on weaving in facts and have the facts lead up to the conclusion, so when you state the conclusion, no doubt with conviction, people will accept the conclusion because the facts support it, not just because you believe it to be true. I also noted, and again, this is my first debate, this may be the convention, the way it's done, all four of you have individual styles which are apparent and are very effective. you all seem to deviate. Those styles seem to disappear during the cross-examination, and the cross-examination seemed to be perhaps flat, maybe. And I just noticed that. It seemed to be different, materially different from the rest of the debate.
So how about another round for our students? And on behalf of the NAUDL, let me ask you to give one more round of applause for our judges who took their time out and gave those thoughtful comments. I also remember that when I was debating, the judge comments before the decision was announced, I had maybe 50% retention because I kept thinking, oh, yeah, I know, yeah. What's the decision? Did we win? Did we lose? And so now we can get 100% of your attention. So, and without more delay, on a 10-5 decision, one ballot of which was the audience, 14 ballots of which were the judges, on a 10-5 decision, the winner of the Great Space Debate is the Affirmative from Dallas. So the Great Space Debate Finalist Award goes to Baltimore. And the Great Space Debate Champion Award goes to the Affirmative from Dallas. And I thank you all for coming on my behalf, on behalf of our judges, on behalf of our students, and on behalf of the NAUDL. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.